One of the things that I want to do to be able to just let the students know that somebody cares. And so there's a bunch of things that I try to do, and actually it's not just me, it's really a whole instructional team. And so one of the things that's really important, of course, is to the students is learning their names. And I tell new faculty, the only way you're going to learn students' names is by saying them. And so I start out with, it's really nice that Blackboard has a photo roster now. So I actually pulled all the photos out of the photo roster and I put them in a grid that's sort of laid out the same way that the class is laid out. And that way, even though the students don't sit in exactly the same place every time, I know once they're in teams, I know where the team sits. So it's good. So then I can look around the class and I can compare it to my little photo roster, and I keep looking at it and looking at it, and I use their names in class. But even when I'm not using their names in class, I'm sort of saying their names in my head to just get used to all of their names. And then once I've got their names down, I use them repeatedly. And so, students really, they get the message that, not just that I care, right, but that I'm expecting them to be there. And another fabulous thing we started doing that communicates that to students is if I look out at the team and there's only 3 people, but I know it's a 4-person team. So I'll ask the 3 students, so who's missing? And did they let you know? And so it does a couple things, right? One, all the students who are there are thinking, oh, so if I'm absent, I need to make sure that I tell my teammates that I'm not going to be there, and then we can figure out what to do about it. But it also makes sure that they know right away, I expect them to know each other's names, like right away, because they only have to learn 3 names, assuming they know their own. So it's great. It works. I mean, attendance went from something like 76% when we were in a classroom that didn't really make that work well to, right up to 98%. And because students know, it's not just that they're accountable to me because I know their names, they're accountable to each other on the team. And so that's a central strategy for us, not just because engineering is done in teams, right? But because learning happens in a group. Learning is when you are understanding something in a way that the rest of your community, whatever that is, understands it. And possibly that you have a chance to influence the way the community understands it, right? But again, it still has to happen in a community. And so the students end up, they learn by the way that we use teams a lot in the class, they learn that that they're expected to be able to learn when I'm not around, that they're going to learn from their peers, and it's not a moment of weakness that they, I had to ask somebody else for help, right? Because that's the way that engineers learn on the job too. When we talk to practicing engineers and say, hey, here's a problem you've never seen before, what are you going to do? And they say, I'm going to phone a friend, because that's the #1 problem-solving strategy. Ultimately, what we look to do is to just help students understand that when the professor is not around, they still need to know how to learn. And so part of that happens during class time when I stop talking, they work as a team, and we watch to see what happens, right? Because the #1 job then is just to make sure that the teams are functioning. Because if the teams are functioning, the learning is probably happening on its own. And so we give control of the classroom over to the students. They go about learning, and we just wait until we need to make sure that we step in and help the teams function better. And if that works, our job is done. To help faculty understand how important it is to let students work in groups and in teams, the first thing is, there's a tremendous amount of research that says that students learn from other students, and they learn in different ways, and so a group of students will explain things in ways that students understand better than a professor will explain them sometimes. Some people think, oh, well, I don't want to do teams because I'm going to make the better students are going to have to waste a whole bunch of time teaching the weaker students, and so the better students are going to be all grumpy about it, right? And the cool thing is that the research says that the better students actually learn more than the weaker students, because they are doing all of this mentoring of other students, which, as any professor knows, right, we learn a tremendous amount from the teaching process. And so the better students actually are learning more when they do that. So students don't naturally know how to function in teams. Students need to be taught how to function in teams, and they need time to practice safely and to be mentored in how that process works, right? Some of our teams function pretty well to begin with. Many of them need guidance, in how to function well as a team. And so again, that's the big thing, is just to watch how the teams are functioning and be prepared to coach students on how to do a better job of being a team.